Hi everyone. Despite Kontakt being the industry standard piece of kit, it has a few things that are a bit complicated about it. I mean, getting the whole thing installed for a start is not easy. But once you're there, and I presume that because you're at this video that you've done that already. Another one of those is using one instance of Kontakt but having multiple instruments with inside it and getting that to route correctly in Ableton. So we're talking about multiple instruments within one instance of Kontakt. We're going to go through three methods. I'm going to show you the method that is kind of the way most people do it. It's way the most of the videos show you how to do it, and there's a good reason why it is like that. But many of the videos don't actually tell you the reason. They say do it, but they don't tell you why. So we're going to tell you why. So that's the first one. The second one is the way that Native Instruments suggests you do it. We can check it off their webpage, and we're going to try that as well. And I'm going to show you a third way, which is very similar to the first one, but is different in one very important thing. And you'll see as we go through what that is. So let's go for it. The first method is the way that pretty much everyone does it. So we got Ableton open just as usual. We're going to drag an instance of Kontakt in, and we'll go from there. Okay, we're just going to use some synths from the Kontakt factory section. It doesn't matter what instrument you use, anything, but I'm just going to use these as an example. Now, this is how Kontakt will open up by default. If it doesn't show you this output section here, come up to this little triple box up here and tick the option for outputs. And that's just going to sort that out. Okay, now what you need to do before you do anything in your main Ableton project is come down to this little outputs button, the plus, and click the little plus button. Quantity, this is a number of channels you want. So this is the number of channels you're going to have in your Ableton. It doesn't matter how many you choose, 1, 2, 4, 8, whatever. For now, I'm just going to do it with 4. But as I say, it doesn't matter. The theory is the same for all of them. Number of channels is slightly confusing. It doesn't quite mean that. What it means, 2 would be stereo, left and right. So it's going to end up producing 8 channels in total, but they'll be stereo pairs. Now, one of the important things here is in this drop-down box, drop it down and just choose KT Kontakt Stereo 1 as your output. If you don't, doing this is what means your outputs route channels 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. If you don't, it doesn't know quite what to do with them, and then it calls them like 63, 64, 65, 66. It doesn't quite understand. So choose KT Stereo 1. Ascending output channel assignments, what you're going to want because you want them to go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's correct. And delete existing channels before creating new ones. That means that it will delete these ones here and start fresh. So that's good. And then the key bit about this is you need to make this your default configuration. So check the box for default configuration and then go OK. Output configuration was saved as default. That's what we're expecting. OK, that. And you'll see now it's given us 4 stereo pairs alongside these 4 auxiliaries that are there by default. Now, the important thing here to do is to close your Kontakt, delete your Kontakt channel, effectively start again. So we're going to do that right now. We're going to go Kontakt, drag a new Kontakt in. And as you can see, it's opened up now with the 4 stereo channels. Now, I said at the beginning that I would explain why we do it this way. And the reason is that when you open this instance of Kontakt here, Kontakt actually has, behind the scenes, like a bit of a conversation with Ableton. And it says, I want to have this many stereo channels. Can you do that? Yes, you can. Supply me those channels. And it has this little backs and forwards about what it can and can't do. And it does that when you open the first instance of Kontakt in your project. Which is why when we come on to our third method later on in the video, you'll see the difference. But that's why it does it. No, not many people seem to tell you that, but it does it because it has to have this conversation backwards and forwards between Ableton about the routings and how many channels it can have and what it does with them. And it does that, as I say, when it opens the first instance. That's why you have to have it set up, your default setup here, so that when it opens that first instance, it automatically knows how many channels you want to have that conversation with Ableton. You only have to do this the first time, okay? And then every other time you open it, because we saved it as our default, it will open up all those channels. Now, you can go ahead and close the outputs box if you don't want to see it anymore, just to give you more space. I'm going to keep it up just because we're going to look at what happens as we go through. So the easy thing to do now is to say, let's add some instruments. It doesn't matter, say, what you choose. I'm going to just add some off of here. We'll take that lead. We'll have a pad, and we'll have a second pad. So we've now got 4 instruments here in so multiple instruments in our one instance of Kontakt. So there's the 4 of them there together. Now, what Ableton and what Kontakt will do by default is it will route the output of all 4 of those, as you can see, to stereo 1, stereo 1, stereo 1, and stereo 1. So that's it's routing them all to this output, which we don't want. We want to route them through correctly. Now, you can do it manually, but actually the easiest way of doing it, I found, is come down to presets and batch configuration. Then under batch functions, we have this option here at the bottom that says split instruments routed to the first output channel, which ours all are, to individual outputs, which is great. That's what you want. So we're going to click that button. And it's helpfully retitled our outputs down here, and it's helpfully put them up here, and it's routed each one to a different output. So we've now got 4 instruments, and we've got 1 on each of 4 different outputs within Kontakt. So that's all good. The question now is, how do we get those into Ableton? So we're just going to close that for a second. So the first one is here already. So you've got this slightly crazy ARPy sound there, and that's fine. To get the other 3 in, we come over to Instrument, and we're just going to External Instrument. And then down here in this box for the details, we're going to choose the MIDI 2 is going to go to, now in this case, 2 Kontakt for me means whatever's titled here, the second channel, and it's called Kontakt by default. So 2 Kontakt, but it's basically whatever you call this channel. So we're going to choose 2 Kontakt. And then in the second drop down, this is a little bit confusing in the way they've titled it. This now means the instrument within the Kontakt instance, the order they're in, so from top to bottom. So that means the first instrument, number 2 means the second, number 3 means the third. I know that 2 Kontakt is very similar to our 2 Kontakt here, but that's just coincidental. So on this second channel, our second Kontakt channel, actually our third proper channel, but second Kontakt channel, we want our second instrument, so we're going to choose the number 2. And if it's armed, which it is by default when you drag it in, we just drop down this third little drop down here, which says audio from. And if we actually play something on our keyboard, you can see the sound is coming out because stereo 2 is the default, but you can see the little meter there that shows which one we want. So we want the default there for the second one. We got that kind of bassy sound, but our first one still works perfectly fine. We've now got the bassy sound on a second channel. That's great. And we're just going to do the same for the other 2. We can drag an external instrument in, already armed. The output is the same, 2 Kontakt, because that's the channel our Kontakt instance is loaded onto. The output is now going to be the 3rd instrument in Kontakt. And if we drop down our box and play the keys, you can see it's highlighting this one here. So we're going to choose that one. And now we've got that nice little kind of pad sound there on the next instrument. And we can do the same thing for the last one. Going to be 2 Kontakt again. This time it's the 4th one. Drop it down. We're expecting it to be that one. Yeah, there we go, that one. And now if we play the second pad noise, we've got the second that second pad noise there. So we've got all 4 instruments from the one instance of Kontakt all loaded. We got that up at the beginning. We've got the bassy sound. We've got the first of the 2 pads, and then we've got the second of the 2 pads. Okay, and that's the way that everyone tells you how to do it. It's the easiest way. Do your setup in Kontakt. Let's just bring it back up again. Do your setup in Kontakt here in terms of your channels first. Then you can just drag them in set the outputs using a batch configuration, batch functions, split instruments, or you can choose them manually. It doesn't matter. It does exactly the same thing. And then route them through using external instruments in Ableton, and that works absolutely fine. So there we go. That's the first method. That's the way that pretty much everyone does it. I hope you can get that to work for you guys perfectly fine. So the second method is the way that Native Instruments tell you how to do it. Now, if we go to Native Instruments webpage, so we're going to insert a standard channel, and it says audio from, and you go external in, you set that to Kontakt, the same channel that's got your instance on, same as before. And then in here, they say drop it down and choose whichever instruments it is here. And then they say to set the monitor to in. So this is now how they say to do it. If we now arm this channel and play something, I get absolutely nothing at all. No, absolutely nothing. I'm pressing the keyboard. I'm getting nothing at all. So that's the second method. That's the way Native Instruments tell you to do it. I can't get it to work. If someone knows how to get this to work, what I'm doing wrong, please put a comment in below and tell me how to get it to work, because I would be really interested to know how they're expecting you to get it to work. And while we're on that point, hopefully this video is good for you so far. If it is, please just hit that like, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe would be even better. I know I don't put videos out very often, but hopefully the videos I do put out are kind of useful for you guys. So that's the second method. That's the way Native Instruments tell you how to do it. Can't get it to work. Let's go on to the third method. The third method is very similar to the first, but with one big difference. Just to prove I'm not doing anything wrong again, I'm going to start from scratch. I'm even going to delete that Kontakt off. So I'm going all the way from the beginning. And we're going to go back to plugins, Kontakt, start again. Now, what I need to do in this one, just to make sure you're not saying I'm doing anything different, is put this configuration back to the standard default. So leave yours as it is. Have you got it set up? I'm just going to do this to show you this other method. So I'm going to put it back to the default, which is one channel, delete existing, make default. Okay, so there we go, is back to the default. Again, I'm going to close. I'm going to delete that instance. And I'm going to start again. So this is Kontakt as it vanilla comes out of the box, no problem whatsoever. Now, the thing about the first method, I always thought that it was interesting that you had to decide how many channels you wanted in your Kontakt instance before you knew how many instruments you were going to use. It just always seems a little bit silly to me that you have to decide how many you wanted. So what people do, of course, is they add way too many just in case they're going to need them. That just seems silly to me. Why would you have to choose how many you want before you do? And actually, you don't have to choose. You can do it, and I'm going to show you. It's very similar. There's a key difference here in Kontakt. So let's do what we did before. Let's bung in 4 instruments. We'll go with that. We'll go with the bass. We'll go with the pad, and we'll go with the other pad as well. So we've got 4 instruments, same as before. The default, they're all routed to stereo 1, same as before, but this time we don't have any more stereo channels to use. We've not set them up. But here under presets and batch configuration, drop down batch functions. You may have seen this option when we came here before. Last time we went to split instruments. This time I'm going to do a different one. This time I'm going to choose the top option, which says clear the output section, this bit, and create one individual channel for each loaded instrument. That's exactly what we want to do here. So if we hit that, there we go. You'll see actually it's done exactly what we had before. We've now got 4 stereo channels with all routed automatically. So this gets us to exactly the same thing we had before. So can we use this within Ableton? Let's close off and do exactly what we did before and go instruments, external instrument, same as before. Now we're going to choose the same again, like we did before, the channel that's got the Kontakt instance on it, and then the instrument number within Kontakt. is the second one down. We're just going to go off in order. Now, here, whereas before we had our stereo channels, we don't have the stereo channels anymore. We've only got the default ones. And this is because, as I said in the first method, when we opened up Kontakt and loaded it onto the channel the first time, it didn't know how many channels to talk to Ableton and produce. So it didn't do anything at all. So even though we've created them in here within Kontakt, Ableton doesn't kind of recognize these because it didn't have that conversation when it was first opened. But, however, if we drop this box down again and press some notes on our keyboard, actually, it does still work. It didn't know quite how to route it, so it's just automatically routed it through these 4 auxiliaries that are already there, that are there by default. So we can just choose that, and lo and behold, look, it works perfectly fine. We've got our first ARP, same as before, and we've now got our bass. And that works perfectly fine. That works perfectly fine. No problem with that whatsoever. So we're going to do the same with the other 2 as well. So this one, we want to go to Kontakt, and we want the 3rd instrument. We'll arm that track, check the drop down, place some notes on the keyboard. Yep, auxiliary 2. Same thing with this one. To Kontakt, the 4th instrument. Drop the box, arm it. Drop the box down, check. Yep, that's good. And actually, we've got the pad, we've got the first pad, we've got the bass, and we've got the ARP. So actually, we've now got exactly the same situation without having to set up those default stereo channels at the beginning. So if you only want a small number of instruments, you don't actually have to do that initial setup. You just need to understand that the routing in Kontakt itself is a little bit more confusing because it doesn't actually mean, what it says in here, because it never had that conversation with Ableton at the beginning. But it does work. So if you are, if you're on, a version of Ableton that you don't know, maybe you're using someone else's, you're at someone else's house and they haven't got it set up, that's no problem. You don't have to change their system. You can do it this way. Now, of course, the obvious question here is what happens if you want more than 4 instruments? Because we've got a standard 4 auxiliaries. What happens if you want more than 4? Actually, what it does is quite interesting. We're going to add a 5th instrument in. Let's add in another bass. So now we've got 5 instruments. The first 4 are routed correctly, exactly as we are imagining them to. The new 5th one, of course, by default has been routed to the same place as the first one. So we're going to do exactly what we did before: presets and batch configuration, batch functions, clear output section, and create one individual channel for each loaded instrument, same as we did before. Let's go for that. Give mine a second. And it's now created us our extra 5th channel within Kontakt here. And it's routed the bass to the 5th channel, and the others are all exactly as they were before. So that's cool. No problem. The question is, what happens when we come to Ableton? Because as you remember, if we check another external instrument, so the top 2 boxes are exactly the same. We now want the 5th instrument within our Kontakt instance. But of course, in here, we've only got 4 auxiliaries. You can guess, I think, probably what's going to happen with it armed if we play some notes on the keyboard. That's come out as auxiliary. Sorry. Okay. Let me explain what I've just done there. I've got 5 instruments in total. And so the first one is on the original. Let's go back to Kontakt and show you what I mean. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember, it was 1 stereo and then 4 auxiliaries at the beginning. So actually allows you 5 instruments natively. So let's just add a 6th instrument. This will clarify what I mean. So we've now got 6 instruments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got the original. If you remember when we first loaded, we had 1 stereo, 1, 2, 3, 4 auxiliaries, and we've now got the extra one. So let's do our batch presets, batch functions, clear and save and reload. Give that a second to run. Okay, so we've now got 6, which is what we needed. So we've now got another bass and another lead. So back here for our one that does work. So it's armed. Let's drop it down, play a note. Yep, that's that one. Great, so that's the 5th one. Let's do our 6th one. Same as before. 2nd channel. We now want the 6th instrument. It's armed. And if you notice now what it does, when we open up and play a note on our keyboard, actually it now uses the unassigned channels. But because it didn't know these were stereo pairs, it hasn't stereoed them together. You've actually got 2 mono channels. So in order to get a stereo signal through here, we've got to do the first one on 1, and we've then got to do the second one exactly the same setup. So it's 2 and 6, 2 and the 6th instrument, and it's armed, so we'll drop down, play a note. The second one is that one. So that now gives us the stereo pair, and it doesn't matter which one you arm, they're both going to play like that. Now this is kind of interesting. This is an interesting way if you deliberately wanted to split the left and right of your instrument in Kontakt into 2 separate channels in Ableton. This would be a way of doing it. You can use the unassigned just as monos and put them onto separate channels in Ableton. So, but you've still got your auxiliaries that it uses there by default. Now, this third theory works because Kontakt has those 4 stereo auxiliaries by default in its default state. So there we go. Hopefully that's been useful. I'm going to do another video shortly showing you, if I reopen up the instance of Kontakt, what these auxiliaries are actually meant to be for. If you use Kontakt, with the first way of doing it, where we set up our channels first and we weren't using these auxiliaries to pull through into Ableton like in the last method, but if you do it in the first method, then what actually are these auxiliaries supposed to be for? And I'm going to do the next video, look out for that. We'll show you what those auxiliaries are supposed to be for. So I hope that's been useful. So method 1 is the way that everyone does it. Set up your stereos in here first, and then off you go. Method 2, the native instruments way. Someone please tell me down below how that is supposed to work, because I can't get it to. And then the third way is a way of getting it to work if you don't have those stereos initially set up. So I hope that's been useful, and we'll see you again in the next video.